And now it's time to move to the second topic. Our second topic for this panel is agriculture by Dr. Riad Saade. Dr. Saade is the CEO of Centre de Recherche des Études Agricoles Libanais, Chairman of Engineering Equipment and Contracting, Damascus, Syria, Levant, Agencies and Trade Company, Damascus, Syria, Doctorate in Geographic Economy from Sorbonne, Paris, PhD in Research Work from California, Professor of Rural Economy and Urbanism, President of the Association of Importers and Merchants of Pesticides from 1978, 1980, 1985, 1988, also President of the Lebanese Association for Agriculture and Rural Development, 1986-2012, co-founder and chairman of the board of the Coopérative Libanaise pour le Développement, 92-93, co-founder and president of the Lebanese Community for Professional Information, and co-founder of Salve Liban. Dr. Saade is also publisher of counted documents in agriculture, development, and economy. Example, Lebanese agriculture, a sector in crisis. Welcome, Dr. Saade. And I would also like to welcome Mrs. Soha Frame. Ms. Frame is the founder of Wata, Lebanese Cider, which is a company that crafts modern cider in her family orchard. She holds a master's degree in development studies, development economics, and international development. She is also a graduate of the American University of Beirut with a bachelor degree in landscape design and eco-management. She will discuss Dr. Saade's paper titled Agriculture Sector. And let me again remind you our ground rules for the session. So we have 40 minutes allocated for this topic, 15 minutes to the author, and then 7 minutes for the discussant. And we wish to leave the remaining time to the presence here in order to ask their questions, as well as people attending over Zoom. Dr. Saade, the floor is yours.
Good morning. There were 3 reasons for me to participate in this forum. The first, because it's looking forward, and it's high time that Lebanese stop talking and start acting forward. The second reason was because it is engaging in critical discussions related to policy reforms. And I expect this critical discussion to be lively and fruitful during the 30 coming minutes. Last, because it involves young scholars, journalists, and women activists. By the way, we've been talking too much about women for the past decades. Maybe we could also add men activists. You are supposed to have read my paper about future vision for a productive and sustainable Lebanese agriculture and for a rural society actively integrated within the nation. So I hope you are ready for a critical discussion. Consequently, I shall not read my paper. Allow me still to underline 6 messages it is sending. The first message, while we were living in a world of taking risks, which is a situation that could be calculated, we have moved to a world of uncertainty, which is an uncalculated situation. And we lately moved to a world of the unknown, which is certainly not helping us in our attempt to suggest a vision for the future of our country. Nevertheless, our duty is to build such a vision on tangible, natural, historical, and social elements that constitute Lebanon. My second message, Lebanon had a mission which it brilliantly fulfilled during the 3 first quarters of the 20th century. Lebanon has been a unique interface between a Western world needing energy and a Middle East region that had plenty of it. In 1975, we were brutally notified about the end of this mission. In 1990, at the end of the war, we had a unique opportunity to find ourselves a new mission. But instead, our bad governance literally destroyed Lebanon. My second message is that any future vision for Lebanon should be based upon a new, clear mission that we are invited to define. Third message, any future mission of the agricultural sector and the rural community in Lebanon must take into consideration the 4 missions of Lebanese agriculture. At the level of the Lebanese society, what society do we want? Since ever we had independence, I know about no government, maybe the government of President Fuad Shahab, who has ever defined the Lebanese society. Do we want a rural society? What kind of society should it be? This is a must. At the level of the national economy, agriculture has been participating up to 20% of the GDP for many years, until services and industry took over and agriculture fell down to 3% of the GDP in the worst years, a few years ago. But agriculture today in 2021 is back to 5.6% of the GDP, and we expect that a properly managed agriculture with all other para-agriculture activities, that is, the activities that would not exist if we did not have agriculture, should reach about a 25% level of the GDP, which is a normal situation for a balanced country. At the level of the food security, honestly, I am smiling when I hear people speaking about food security in Lebanon. It is a shame. And agriculture should be part of to participate and make sure that we get the best out of it for the security of our people. And finally, at the level of the environment, believe me, a farmer and a fisherman who are given a proper, honorable life are the best defenders of the environment. My fourth message, Lebanon enjoys favorable elements for a flourishing agriculture. The first is water. We have water in this dry Middle East, but we don't know how to manage it. Climate diversity is a very positive point because it allows a multitude of productions, and the importance of the domestic and export markets. The evolution of the gross national agriculture product. I'm sure that the gentleman from the World Bank or others never seen this, because if they had seen this, they would have wondered where have gone the $1.2 billion of aid and of loans to the Lebanese government and no impact on the gross national agriculture product. So we can see that between 1958 and 1964, the GNAP increased by 48%. This shows that when there is a government that wants to do something for the people, we can have this kind of growth. Then between 66 and 75, it stagnated, and it decreased between 75 and 1990. What is above the blue line are the prohibited crops, that is, hashish and opium. And in 1986, half of the gross national agriculture product was coming from hashish and opium. Meanwhile, if I can have the next one. Yeah? Meanwhile, the GNAP increased by 544% in the European Union, 384% in the USA, 686% in Japan. During the same period, it decreased by 10% in Lebanon. Lebanese agriculture is agonizing. Fifth message, we should stop talking and address immediately the acute crisis to save 2022-23 agriculture campaign. In Lebanon, there is a tradition. We only talk about a crisis once we are in it. And believe me, if we start thinking about next agriculture campaign that is starting in September 2022, we are already too late. But we should have people who should think about it. Sixth and last message, we should simultaneously also stop talking and address immediately the medium and long-run actions that will guarantee a successful, sustainable Lebanese agriculture. Lebanon cannot live without agriculture. We are not Hong Kong, we are not Singapore, we are not Monaco, even if some people during 30 years wanted it. So let's get ready for a critical discussion. The floor is yours. And we can talk, please, your questions can be in any language.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saade, for your 6 valuable and thoughtful messages. Ms. Suha Frame, we'll start with your discussion and analysis regarding the proposal of Dr. Saade.
Thank you, Dr. Saade, for your paper, and thank you for having me here today in this hopefully impactful discussion. I'm not an expert in agriculture policy. My humble collaboration to this discussion comes from my experience in policy dialogue facilitation and consensus building, but also from my position as entrepreneur in the agri-food business, an advocate and strong advocate for sustainable living. The paper of Dr. Saade, along with the National Agriculture Strategy that maybe most of you know, are encompassing and comprehensive. But amidst all those recommendations for a better sector and a better Lebanon, there is one condition for success that was clearly stated in Dr. Saade's paper: the need for a political decision. And I would add the need for an inclusive, transparent, and relevant policy process. And we focus on relevant. First, the reach of a consensus. A political dialogue to reach a consensus about the threat of the current statu quo on the sector, the irreversible damages to our resources and rural and entrepreneurs' communities, and the lost opportunity of the sector on our national economy. We need to reach a consensus that there might be a point of no return. Second, the need to build a solid agriculture development observatory. And here, Dr. Saade has a lot to say about this. Like any sector, knowledge and data is at the core of sound, strategic, and dynamic policies. The observatory will ensure that solid and up-to-date data is available to experts, stakeholders, and decision makers for a proper management of the agricultural sector. Many initiatives have tried, but with no success until today. Again, a political decision. Putting NAS back on the table, the National Agriculture Strategy, and keeping the momentum, not solely putting it on the table. It should come back as a priority on the table. However, monitoring and stakeholders' dialogue are key to keep momentum and relevance of the strategy. This will allow to identify progress towards the set targets and provide continuous relevant strategic guidance. Fourth, the reactivation of coordination bodies that put together all relevant institutions, donors, and stakeholders. The success of the strategy or the national strategy or other plan depends on joining efforts with other relevant institutions, national institutions, local authorities, NGO, UN, and donor agencies, and the private sector. Donors and donors funding should be part of this mechanism in order to ensure that the funds are playing an active role in the implementation of the strategy. According, the design of the project and impact are part of the regional and national strategy and not on ad hoc projects. Stakeholders, including representatives of the rural community, the farming community, and the agri-business entrepreneurs should be core to this committee. And here we open the whole discussion about reforming the cooperatives, but this is a separate discussion to be taken on the side. And lastly, public mobilization. In our public discourse, we merely hear about agriculture policies or reform. So there is a need to build awareness campaigns about the sector with the aim to increase public knowledge and consolidate opinions that would potentially lead to lobbies and pressure decision makers to meet promises and deliver. The need for a parliamentary lobby, hopefully after those elections, that would hold the agriculture sector close to their mission and fight for sound laws, policies, and projects. Yes, we need strong, focused, and determined leader to take this forward. But what if this political consensus and decision is not taken or did not happen? How can our rural community that is a wealth, socially and economically, continue amid this crisis? How can agribusiness entrepreneurs sustain? And how can we stop the daily degradation of our agriculture wealth? In short, how can this sector resist? In his paper, Dr. Saade mentions addressing the crisis by forming a crisis cell of independent experts to take drastic measures to face this crisis. But we all know, whenever we talk about a crisis cells in Lebanon, we risk falling into the political power share and eventually a bottleneck. However, this cell can address immediate actions that can be done and not necessarily a point of political contention. I will state few examples to join forces with the agri-force community in order to provide the needed support to facilitate the export of agri-products, direct production, and expand export. A lot has been done in the past years, and I speak from experience, I speak from colleagues I've been working on, fellow entrepreneurs. We need support. There has been a lot of work done, excellent Lebanese products, but we need a push. We cannot do it on our own. Consolidate the process of quality assurance critical for export and coordinate with relevant organizations, NGOs, INGOs active in the capacity building of farmers with regard to more efficient and safer agriculture practices. As Mr. Jmail said earlier, we haven't been the best in terms of competitiveness when it comes to cost, but we are when it comes to quality. How do we make sure we sustain it and make it better? Introduce agriculture AOC to increase the value of Lebanese products. Actively and systematically market agri-produce abroad and form a pool of brand ambassadors for Lebanese products. While we await a national strategy to solve the energy crisis, and ideally the development of sustainable and efficient agri-industrial zones, as mentioned as well previously in the industrial panel, donor-funded projects ought to focus more on infrastructure, including energy projects and post-harvest facilities that would have a regional impact, benefiting the surrounding communities of farmers and agribusinesses and help alleviate the cost of production rather than on focusing on ad hoc projects. And here there's I know a lot of you will not agree, but subsidization of agriculture products needed for production. And yes, this might be controversial in the current situation, but there's a minimum support needed on this level for the rural community to continue attending to their lands and orchards. Support local food production that would lead to employment, decrease dependency on imported foods, and therefore benefiting the local economy through generating a circular economy. Finally, as we approach the summer season, there's a big need for a national campaign on agritourism. That we are expecting a big number of visitors worldwide, and that would help a lot the rural communities to sustain and strive. Many other measures can be taken for sure, and the list is extensive. But I would join my voice to Dr. Saade by saying we should stop talking and address immediately the acute crisis to save what is left of our natural, social, and economic wealth, so we can then start looking forward. So I will stop talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dingisley, any feedback or?
Actually, a lot to say after such great interventions. Maybe also some cross-cutting themes that I've heard in the first panel as well. We talked about, again, the first panel and now about infrastructure and putting the right ecosystem and the right zone, whether for industrial zones or also for the agriculture sector. We also talked about the made in Lebanon, the AOC, the possibility for Lebanon to increase its potential through this labeling, this branding, and here I think this is also a cross-cutting theme that we would like to see. But at the end, it's also a lot of a matter of access to financing. We talked about this in the industry. It's also the case for the agribusiness sector. And we as EBRD, we really would like to do more. We have the capacity, the appetite to do more. But, and here I join what I said in the beginning in my introductory words, we need to have the right setup in terms of reforms implementation to be able to come up with financing with support. So what we're doing for now is trying as much as we can to support whether the industry, and we worked a lot with the Ali Association, but also with the agribusiness players in the agriculture sector. We support with technical assistance, with advisory. This is mainly a EU-funded program, so this is mainly grants. We are trying to, in this lean time of not being able to finance, at least to provide this technical assistance, this advisory to prepare for future investments. So we work a lot with farmers, with capacity building. We try to also to do some knowledge sharing with some best practices, international best practices in the industry. And my colleague Damien also mentioned the industrial zones. We are together on this, and we're really willing to invest and put some financing in order to improve the ecosystem. But again, unfortunately, we are doing only really 10 or 20% of what an institution like EBRD can do in Lebanon, because we are lacking the ecosystem that will enable us to provide more investment and financing. So again, looking forward for that reforms and time for action.
Thank you. Please, can we have again, yes, can we have again the graph, the red slide, and we are ready for the question. Mr. Aita. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Riad and Lady, for the very well put points and intervention, but I will also use a cross-section with the other things. I think that EIB and EBRD had been in the agricultural sector, and there was a financial crisis in 2019. I would like maybe that you both explain what happened to your loans through the banks or directly to the agriculture and more generally to the sector, and or maybe your investments in these sectors and in the banks.
Thank you, Mr. Aita.
I'll just answer maybe just the direct question on our investments, and maybe also Damien will. We are de facto a counter-cyclical investor. So when you talk about agribusiness, the EBRD invests more or less 10 billion euros per year in our countries of operations, out of which at least between 2 and 3 billion are in the agriculture sector. And of course, among these investments, whether there are a crisis or not, there is some NPLs, which is, again, part of our mandate. We do our best to make sure that our investments are economically and financially viable, but it is part of our job to take that additional risk, because we have, apart from the investment, we have also a mandate in terms of supporting economies in transition. So this is, again, part of our job to take more risk. specifically on the recent crisis, again, we are a country. In Lebanon, actually, as far as EBRD is concerned, we have started investing in 2018 in Lebanon. We opened our office here in Beirut in 2017, and so far we have been mainly exposed to the financial sector. So 90% of our portfolio is in the financial sector, and we have one corporate client. We had a lot of other projects, including in the agribusiness sector, in the pipeline. But unfortunately, since October 19, we were not able to materialize this pipeline. So today, we don't have a direct exposure to the agribusiness sector. You know the story, you know? Our exposure to the financial sector is 100% provisioned. So unfortunately, and well, if we touch on this, and maybe it will be also the topic for our fourth panel, but we try together with our colleagues in the international financial institution sphere to be as patient and as constructive as possible. We are aware that our investments, our financing are lost, but it is also part of our role to be in the solution, in the upcoming solution, and not only another problem in this equation.
Thank you, Mr. Dingizli. Dr. Saade, we have a question here. Cooperatives exist in Lebanon.
Sorry?
Cooperatives, تعاونيات. And yet not many farmers join them. So what can be done so as to encourage these farmers to enroll in these cooperatives, and what are the services they offer?
I will answer to that question, but before, I would like to make sure that my message gets through. It seems that it did not. This table, I just addressed myself to you, gentlemen, to you, sir. You have been pouring into this country $1.2 billion in agriculture, aid and loans. We did not see any impact on the gross national agriculture product. Have you ever thought, where did this money go? And when you, sir, say, rightfully, access to finance is vital. Yes, it is. But have we learned anything? That's the point. Today, the Ministry of Agriculture, which pretends that it has no budget, is treating $320 million of your money. Et ça part en fumée. So what is it you want? How have you been through these 30 years helping the reconstruction of Lebanon without noticing that? I bet you, sir, this is the first time you see this graph, because it's not published. Statistics are forbidden in Lebanon because statistics allow accountability. But why didn't you try something at that level? You are talking about knowledge. You were talking rightfully about education. Yes, sir. But why don't you go deeper in knowledge? But you know, honestly, we needed these $1.2 billion. Honestly, for your countries, it would have been a pride to really say we've done something. Today, c'est un constat d'échec. Total. So please, let's no more repeat all these words we've been listening to during the 30 past years. Let's move to some different approach. Let's start talking a different language. That's all I can say. Now, if I can come back to cooperatives. Same as for many other institutions, we have been under the French mandate. We should thank France for the institutions it has been building and which we received at the independence. The problem is that the laws that were prepared with students of this university, where I have been teaching for 12 years, by the way, are more French than adapted to the Lebanese situation. And the law for the cooperatives in Lebanon is just copy-paste of the French law. Now, one thing is sure, we in Lebanon, we have a sense of cooperation. We call it aouni. مش تعاوني, we call it aouni. And at the end of the Mass on Sunday, the priest will say, عوني يا شباب, بطرس بده يصب سقف بيته. So the priest is saying to the people, let's go and help Butros just pouring his concrete on the top of his house. So there is this kind of spirit. But there is also a reality. This country has been always fighting for survival since ever. And in this case, the cooperative system in Lebanon or elsewhere, anywhere in the world, if there is no missionary that is holding the cooperative himself and pushing it, it never works. And in Lebanon, we have successful cooperatives which have worked, and we have lots of failures. But the problem of governance in this country has made it that every single politician or president of municipality or whatever has wanted his own cooperative, just thinking about whatever grants will be received through this ministry or that other ministry, etc. No, it's a shame. We should look at it in a different way. You see, governance is the basis of any future discussion, and I really insist that we should know what society we want, and then economists are tailors. They tailor a dress at the size of the society you have wished to have. And at that time we have an economy, and believe me, the Lebanese people are skilled enough to be able, even illiterate, believe me, even illiterate Lebanese would be able to build up the country, but we need a certain governance, a certain basic situation that we don't have up till now. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Saade. Other questions? Yes, Mr.
Sorry, I would just like to answer Mr. Saade's suggestion on, and indeed this is a very interesting slide, and first time I've seen it. But just very briefly, unfortunately, EIB has not invested directly in the agribusiness, only through our loans to banks, which has gone for some part of it to some companies in the agribusiness. And I think, as Khalil rightly pointed out, EBRD has been present very recently, and so I don't think they have either any significant exposure to the sector. But I can only agree more with you on governance and all that, and this, I think we're all advocating for this change in the country. But what I can say on the EIB more specifically, and the more general problem of the leakage of subsidies and foreign aid to Lebanon, we finance specific projects. And we only disperse against invoices. I mean, I don't want to go into any, specific detail that people are probably not interested in here, but it's a project-by-project loans. So we are quite satisfied that our money is going to the projects that we finance. And our public sector exposure is in the water sector, the wastewater, transport sectors. And this is also why we are finding it very difficult to actually disperse at this point in time and finalize our projects, because we are very adamant that the money has to go to the project and that the projects have to be delivered. We do not provide budgetary support where, budgetary lines where indeed it's more difficult to track the funds, and that has other challenges. So it is a very big problem that you point out, but I think institutions like ours, which finance projects and specific projects are slightly different in the way we operate. And while it is possible, obviously, to evade our control systems, it is more difficult. But it is a problem.
Thank you. You see, again, to help Lebanon, there are two problems here. The first problem is that your projects have never been conceived for Lebanon. They were conceived by foreign experts who ignore most of the time, I'm speaking about agriculture, who ignore most of the time the situation of the Lebanese agriculture. And we have had the chance to talk to them, but after the project has been initiated, it was too late. And they always admitted, yes, this is the reason why it's not working. And you're right, you're financing project by project. But our feeling is that your duty at certain time is, well, we have a budget, let's spend it. Our wish is, there is a budget, let's make the best out of it. And we are ready. And you have so many Lebanese experts who would be ready to do so. But they are not involved. Because at the Lebanese government level, from the very start in 1992, there has been a group that has been taking over the whole thing and making sure it's everything but what the country needs.
Dr. Saade, another question from, how can consumers help the agricultural field in Lebanon? How can consumers help the agricultural field in Lebanon? So well, it's a message for all of us here as consumers.
The consumers are helping quite a lot because after all they are buying the products. And Lebanese consumers are very funny. They are so, there is no such Lebanese consumer. There is such a diversity. I mean, if you move from South Beirut to North Beirut, you get through different countries with different tastes and different wishes, and the prices are also sometimes double or triple when you move from a quarter to another. And this does not help. The information does not exist when it comes to markets in Lebanon, and the problem of marketing has never been addressed properly. The wholesale market in Lebanon is a catastrophe. The kilo is not 1,000 grams. The pound is not 100 piastres. There is 20% unsold automatically. And there is a 10% commission. So at the end of the day, the farmer is really the slave. He has been working for 3, 4, 6 months, 9 months sometimes, and he brings his crop to be sold, and then he's stripped of all of it. Something should be done at that level. Same at the level of exports. Now, same for industry as well as for agriculture. The private initiative has proven to be very healthy in Lebanon. And this is what's keeping on. Lebanese agriculture, the success, there are two matters, very simple. The whole food chain should be controlled. Then you are assured of success. And second, if possible, and whenever possible, foreign partnership. Partnership does not mean having shares in the company. It could be any type of partnership, but partnership means transfer of technology, and we are really not at a stage where we have all the technology, transfer of technology, but also opening markets. This would be a solution, and that is working today. You have so many agriculture operations which are very successful at export because just they control the whole food chain, and the future is not to small farmers. This is why the definition of a rural society, you don't need to be in agriculture to be in the rural society. There are so many small industries, agriculture industries and others. There are so ecotourism, etc. we should define this society before going into small solutions. In Arabic we call it ترقيع, وصار لنا 30 سنة عم نرقع.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saade. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Ms. Frame, Mr. Dingizli.